Brian Tracy presenta el Seminario Fénix sobre la psicología del conocimiento.
Session 24, Developing a Success Personality.
The great steel magnate, Andrew Carnegie, who accumulated a fortune of over $500 million at the beginning of this century, starting as a penniless immigrant, once said that, "I will pay more for the ability to get along with others than for any other single skill." And today, in our society, your ability to get along with other people, your social intelligence, is the most valuable, most precious single asset that you have. Not only in terms of your career, not only in terms of your marriage and your relationships, but in terms of your own mental well-being. In this session, we're going to talk about developing a success personality. We're going to talk about developing the quintessence of mental health, which is a positive personality, a positive mental attitude, the kind of person that everybody likes to be around, the kind of person who is welcome everywhere. We said very early in this seminar that 85% of everything that you ever accomplish in life will be as a direct result of how well you get along with other people. That today, even the biggest companies in America are hiring on the basis of personality and attitude rather than on the basis of grades, proficiency, skills, and experience. Why? It's because if the person has the right personality skills, they can learn anything else they need in order to be successful. But if the person has all the skills in the world and a lousy personality, there's no way that they can take the responsibility of changing it. So 85% of our happiness in life, according to the research, comes from happy involvement with other people. Also, 85% of all of our problems in life come from unhappy involvement with other people. The other 15%, in case you're interested, comes from achievement. So it is possible for us to get a certain amount of satisfaction in life from achievement, from success, from making money, building businesses and careers and so on, but most of our happiness is going to come from our relationships. So in this session, we're going to show you how you can dramatically improve the quality of your relationships doing some very, very simple things. We know, with regard to your relationships, that there is a direct relationship between how well you get along with other people and the health of your personality. In fact, everybody wants to have a more healthy personality. So let's look at how you measure healthy personality. What are some of the simple measures? Well, we've talked about several of them in the course of this seminar. Number one measure of healthy personality, of course, is how much you like yourself. How much you like yourself is the core of your personality. People who like themselves a lot have very healthy personalities. Number two measure of healthy personality is how much responsibility you accept. People who accept a lot of responsibility for themselves, who look upon themselves as being the key agents in their lives, people who refuse to blame other people, have very healthy personalities. Another example of healthy personality is how easily you forgive. One of the things that we know is there's a direct relationship, one-to-one relationship, between how freely you forgive and forget when somebody hurts you and how healthy your personality is. Number four measure of healthy personality is what is called positive expectations. The degree to which you look for the good in everything and everybody around you. People who have a propensity to look for the good are truly healthy people. And the fourth measure, or the fifth measure of healthy personality, is what we're talking about today, is how well you get along with others. How well you get along with others. As a matter of fact, you really cannot have a healthy personality in isolation of your relationships with other human beings. Wonderfully enough, there is a law of reciprocity in this, is that the more you like yourself, the more you like others. The more responsibility you accept, the better you get along with them. The more you freely forgive and forget and refuse to hold grudges, the more it improves the quality of your relationships. The more you look for the good in people and situations, the better you get along with yourself and them. And the better you get along with other people, surprise, surprise, the more you like yourself. So it's a wonderful series of reciprocal relationships. And this brings us to an important law, one of the last laws we'll talk about, probably the last. It's called the law of indirect effort. And the law of indirect effort simply says that in our relationships with other people, we have a tendency to get the things that we want indirectly faster than directly. Now, I can give you a very simple example. If you try to go after things directly in your relationships, often you'll be frustrated, often you'll be humiliated, you'll be embarrassed, and so on. Let me give you a couple of examples. For instance, if you want to impress other people, Okay? You want to impress other people? Have you ever tried to impress someone else? Somebody you thought was important or valuable and you tried to impress them? Have you ever tried to impress someone else? What you end up doing is exactly the opposite. But the way that you impress other people is simply this, is be impressed by them. Be impressed by them. If you want other people to be interested in you, what is the way, using the law of indirect effort, what is the way that you get people to be interested in you? Is, of course, be interested in them. If you want people to like you, what's the best way? It's to like them. If you want people to respect you, what is the best way? It's to respect them. In every case, this law of indirect effort works in building our human relationships. One final point. We've talked about some of the mental laws, and I'd like to just refer you to three. One is the law of sowing and reaping. The law of sowing and reaping says the quality of your relationships, what you are reaping in your relationships at any given moment, is a result of what you have sown in those relationships. What you are getting in your relationships has very little to do with the other person or with fate or with background or nature. What it has to do with what you've sown is with what you've sown. Law of correspondence says that your external world will correspond to your internal world, as within, so without, especially in your relationships. And of course, the law of attraction says you always attract to you people who are very much like you are inside. If you want to change the quality of your relationships, the starting point is to change the quality of your relationships with yourself, and your external relationships will mirror that. Now, when we talk about this, how well you get along with others, let's show a very, very simple graph. And this is the graph of human personality, from the most introverted to the most extroverted, or if you like, from an inner-directed person to an outer-directed person. And the person who has a truly healthy personality can get along with a great variety of people going from the median. And the median, of course, is the average personality, not introverted or extroverted. Now we can superimpose on this, I guess this is the center, we can superimpose on this another graph. And this is the graph of self-esteem. From high self-esteem to low self-esteem. And we find a very interesting thing, and this graph is my own creation. We find that the graph is like this. That if you have a low level of self-esteem, say down here, you don't particularly like yourself or you have feelings of inferiority or negativity, then the number of people that you can get along with will be limited to people who are pretty much in the middle of the spectrum. People who have, you might call them very easy to get along with, neutral, bland personalities. However, as you go up the ladder of self-esteem, as you like and respect and accept yourself more and more, the number of people that you can get along with expands. As your level of self-esteem goes up, you can get along with more and more people across this spectrum, if you like. And as you get to the point where you have high levels of self-esteem and self-acceptance, you find you can get along with almost anybody that you meet. And since, of course, the great business of life is getting along with as many people as possible, because the more people you can get along with, the more opportunities you have to live an interesting, fascinating, exciting life. The wonderful thing is, as your self-esteem goes up by working on yourself, the quality of your relationships with others expands. So what is the key to raising your own self-esteem? Wonderfully enough, because of the law of reciprocity, every single thing that you do that raises the self-esteem of someone else raises your own self-esteem at the same time. That means you cannot do anything genuinely kind or generous to raise the self-esteem of other people without raising your own at the same time. If you want to have a truly healthy personality, then you use the law of reversibility. The law of reversibility, in one of its applications, is simply this, is that everything that you do to boost the self-esteem of others boosts your self-esteem simultaneously. And so what we're going to look at in the rest of this session are what are some of the things that you can do to raise the self-esteem of other people and simultaneously raise your own so that you become a healthier personality. And by the way, there's a direct relationship between happy involvement with other people and long life, health, energy, vitality, resistance to disease, longevity, and everything else. And the key to raising the self-esteem of others is to make others feel important. Make others feel important. This is and always has been the key to successful human relationships. Mary Kay Ash has a beautiful little analogy. She says she imagines that every person she meets has a sign around their neck that says, "Make me feel important." Every person she meets has this sign that says, "Make me feel important," and what she does is she responds to that sign. Make others feel important. Treat others well, make them feel important, and surprisingly enough, you will feel important too. The reciprocal principle works. Now, how do we make others feel important? Number one, top of the list, is eliminate destructive criticism. Eliminate destructive criticism. There is nothing that causes a person's self-esteem to go down faster than destructive criticism. Remember, it is destructive criticism in childhood that sets us up for fears of failure, fears of rejection, feelings of inferiority, inadequacy, undeservingness, guilt, and everything else. And most of us are still struggling to get over those feelings because of the inadvertent remarks and comments that our parents made to us when we were young. So eliminate destructive criticism. Never criticize anybody because it devalues them. It kicks the chair out from underneath their self-esteem. It makes them feel terrible. Just doing that, making that one change in your life, eliminating destructive criticism, will make you a far more attractive person than you can possibly imagine if you have a tendency toward criticism. Number two is be agreeable. Be agreeable. Be agreeable, that means don't argue. I remember when I was a young man, I was very fast-mouthed, if you like, and I used to win arguments. I used to win any argument. I would do my reading, I would do my research, and I would be excellent. I got to the point where nobody could beat me in an argument. And you know something? I also got to the point where I didn't have anybody to argue with. I got to the point where nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with me. I never got invited to anybody's house. People wouldn't play with me at school because I was always arguing, and even though I was winning, I was losing. So don't argue. And a way that you avoid arguing is a very, very simple technique. It's this. It is try first to understand. Rather than to be understood, use this law of indirect effort and try first to understand the other person's point of view. What is it that causes the other person to think and feel the way they do? If you disagree with them, the natural tendency of the immature personality is to try to overwhelm the other person with argument. However, the tendency of the mature personality is to take the time to try to understand why the other person thinks and feels the way they do. It could very well be that their reasoning is superior to yours. At the very least, there's a beautiful line that says, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." One of the most important principles in the development of human personality is the principle of non-resistance. The principle of non-resistance was, if you like, brought to a head by Mahatma Gandhi in India this year, or in this century, when he was able, if you like, to defeat the entire British Empire and take India out of the empire and put it under home rule simply by a process of non-resistance. Jesus said in the Bible, he said, in the New Testament, he said, "Agree with thine adversary quickly." Now, there's several reasons for this. The number one reason is the very best way to keep a positive mind, to be enthusiastic, to be liked, and to like other people is not to get into arguments with them. To do everything possible to avoid an argument. When I first got married, I found that the natural tendency for people when they live together is to get into arguments because you disagree about times and things and so on. But I also found a very neat little thing that has served me well, and that is to agree quickly. If when you see an argument coming, back off from it, agree, and try to see the other person's point of view. The place to start with being agreeable and refusing to criticize is where? Of course, it's at home. The interesting thing is, and Emmett Fox says it beautifully, he says, "If you must be rude to strangers, but save your company manners for your family." Naturally, we have a tendency to go out and be very polite to people that we've never seen before and will never see again, and then we come home and we criticize and complain and argue with the people that we love the most. All right, the third principle in making other people feel important, now you don't criticize, now you don't argue, you've now a pleasant, positive personality. The third thing is acceptance. The third behavior. Now, acceptance satisfies one of the deepest of all subconscious cravings. Remember, when we come into the world, what we want more than anything else is to be accepted by our parents, to be unconditionally loved and approved of and accepted by our parents. And when we grow up as adults, we still need that love and approval. And the way that we convey acceptance is very simply this: smile. Whenever you smile at another person, you convey acceptance. As a matter of fact, work in interpersonal psychology and interpersonal dynamics suggests that when two people meet for the first time, and every subsequent time, the very first thing that takes place is a relationship of acceptance or non-acceptance occurs. It's conveyed by body language, by facial expressions, by tone of voice, but until that relationship is established, no other communication takes place. And you can trigger that relationship just simply by smiling and unconditionally accepting another person, no matter who they are. Step number 4 is appreciation. Appreciation, like acceptance, whenever you engage in any kind of appreciation, you raise the self-esteem of the other person. When you smile, by the way, some interesting research seems to suggest that when you smile, not only do you cause the other person to feel positive, but the effort of smiling actually triggers endorphins in the brain and gives you a generalized sense of well-being. And they say even an insincere smile is better than a sincere frown. So smile, force yourself to smile, and you will find that you can act your way into feeling like smiling just by making a habit of smiling at other people. With regard to appreciation, how do we express appreciation? We use the word thank you over and over again. Saying thank you to your spouse, saying thank you to your children, saying thank you to your coworkers and your subordinates, saying thank you to people in restaurants, saying thank you on a regular basis when you feel it. Expressing gratitude raises people's self-esteem like the mercury in a thermometer on a hot day. And you'll find that the most powerful men and women, the most successful men and women, tend to be very gracious and they tend to be very courteous. The television characterizations or caricaturizations of men and women who are powerful but who are peremptory and push people around are not very close to the real world, because people become powerful and successful to the degree to which they get the cooperation of other people. And people only have a tendency to cooperate with others if the others are the type of people that they like to work with. So be gracious, be courteous, be appreciative, say thank you. Thomas Carlyle once said that you can tell a big person by the way they treat little people, and that's very true. Number 5 is admiration. Admiration means admiring the traits of another person. If the person is industrious or punctual or hardworking or accurate, or admiring the possessions of another person. You see, we get emotionally involved and bound up in our characters and our personalities. And when somebody recognizes and acknowledges it and admires it, we feel tremendous. We get caught up in our possessions. We're proud of our homes, our cars. We're proud of our watches, our shoes. We're proud of our children. We're proud of our offices. And if a person says, boy, that looks nice, or that's a great-looking car, or that's a beautiful house, or this is a lovely living room, or that's an excellent suit, anything that we say, as long as it is sincere, and never say anything that's insincere, because people are very, very smart. They can detect insincerity. Remember, Abraham Lincoln said, everybody likes a compliment. Everybody likes a compliment. I have worked with billionaires, and I have worked with very powerful and successful heads of large corporations and conglomerates, and I have found that saying something that I truly feel that is complimentary to them about themselves, their businesses, their work, and so on, is always responded to as positively as if you were admiring the trait or possession of someone who had low self-esteem. Sometimes people who have the highest self-esteem and success are the ones who are most in need of admiration and appreciation. Now, the 6th thing that you can do to raise the self-esteem of others. And remember, every time you raise somebody else's self-esteem, you raise your own. Every time you increase the health of somebody else's personality by the law of indirect effort, you increase the health of your own personality, is approval. Approval satisfies one of the deepest cravings of the human psyche, the craving to be valued, the craving to be valuable. In fact, one of the definitions of self-esteem is the degree to which an individual considers themselves to be praiseworthy. A person who considers himself to be praiseworthy has high self-esteem. So when you give approval or praise, it's been demonstrated, I think it was Napoleon who said, I have made an incredible discovery. Men will die for ribbons. In other words, he found that soldiers who would not give their life for any amount of money would risk their lives in battle for the praise and approval represented by the ribbons and the medals that he handed out. Keys to approval. Number 1 is be immediate. The closer the praise is to the thing that you praise, the more likely it is the person will repeat it. If you want your children or your employees to continue doing something, as soon as they do it, say, boy, that's a good job. Number 2 is be specific. say, boy, you did a wonderful job on that lawn, that house, that letter, whatever it happens to be, the more immediate and specific the praise, the more rapidly it raises self-esteem, the more likely it is that the behavior will be repeated. And third of all, be public with your praise. Whenever you give recognition in public, it doubles or triples the impact, because the effect of other people's opinions on our behavior is tremendous. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that we are who we are and we do what we do because of the way we think other people think of us. We're strongly affected by other people's opinions. All right, number 7 is attention. Now, attention is one of the most powerful ways to raise self-esteem. Attention means listening. Why is attention and listening so powerful? It's because we always pay attention to that which we value, and we always ignore that which we do not value. So if you want to tell a person that you value them, that they are in effect valuable, pay close attention to them, listen to them, spend time with them. Now here's some of the keys to attention. Number 1 is listen attentively. Listen attentively. Listen without interruptions. Listen patiently. Listen closely. Number 2 is pause before replying. Pause before replying. Don't interrupt. Let the person say everything that they have to say and pause. Wait. Show them that you are really considering what they're saying. Number 3 is question for clarification. Instead of rushing in to speak, question to clarify what the person has said, which is a way of telling them for sure that you're really listening. And here's the best of all questions. How do you mean? When you're listening to a person speak and you want to fully understand and you want to tell them that you're listening, say, how do you mean exactly? And ask for them to explain to you clearly. And finally, remember the boomerang. And the boomerang says simply this. It says that any genuine emotion expressed by you toward any other person is going to boomerang back on you. Just like the law of sowing and reaping, the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, the law of correspondence says that any genuine emotion, now that's a genuine emotion. In other words, if you say something positive about someone else, it's going to go out to that person and it's going to come back and it's going to boomerang on you. So say only good things. When you talk about other people, talk about them as though what you were saying was going to be printed in the paper. When you think about other people, send out positive thoughts and positive ideas. Think all the time about how you can make other people feel important. Treat other people as though they were the most valuable people in the world, because to them, they believe they are. And the final rule with regard to superior human relations is what we call the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule simply says, love your neighbor as yourself. Like your neighbor as yourself. Treat your neighbor as yourself. Ask yourself in any situation, how would I like to be treated in this situation? Ask yourself, when you're in a difficult situation with someone or an argument or a disagreement, say, if the conditions were reversed, how would I like to be treated in this situation? And here's something that you can do. Pick a role model. Pick the person that you admire more than anybody else in the world in terms of their personality. And whenever you're in a situation with someone else, pretend you are like that person. Many years ago, when I was traveling in Africa, I worked with Dr. Albert Schweitzer, one of the most beautiful men who ever lived. And so very often when I'm in a situation with other people, I think, how would Albert Schweitzer act in this situation? Or I think, how would Jesus of Nazareth act in this situation? And if you use that as your role model, and if you use the credo of making other people feel important as your guiding light, you will develop a success personality that will lead you to accomplishing everything that you want in life in a world filled with other people.
Session 25, Building Superior Relationships.
One of the oldest cliches is that, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Benjamin Disraeli, the great Prime Minister of England, once said that no success in public life can compensate for failure in the home. And when we started this seminar several sessions ago, we talked about the importance of the power of love, and that how you and I as human beings are love-tropic organisms, that everything that we do is either to get love or to compensate for the lack of love. And there's no place where this is more important than in the quality of the intimate relationships that we form with other people. In fact, one of the measures of mental health, according to Abraham Maslow, is your ability to enter into long-term, intimate, loving relationships with other members of the human race. And I want to talk in this session about some of the things that might help you, which have helped me to enjoy a higher quality of loving relationships with your mate or your spouse or the person that is most important to you. First of all, let's talk about the idea of what makes a relationship successful. And I think that there are 6 keys that make a relationship successful. 6 keys to successful relationships. Let me explain them to you one at a time. Number 1 is, of course, similarities attract. Similarities attract. Similarities attract in almost all areas, but especially in the areas of values, in the areas of attitudes toward the critical things like children, like money. Do you know that? And like sex. For instance, that arguments over money are not one of the number 1 reasons why marriages break down, young marriages break down, and probably older marriages too. Arguments over sex are number 2. Arguments over leisure time, what we're going to do when we're not working, are the number 3 reason why relationships break down. So similarities are very, very important. It's sort of like when you meet the person who is right for you, there will be a chemistry. They call it a right chemistry. It feels good. It feels right because you will be in accord or in harmony on almost all of the critical areas of life. We find that virtually all of your difficulties come is when you from clashing with people who have different opinions and ideas from you. Now, with regard to similarities, the most important part of you as a human being is your self-concept, your central belief system. And your central belief system with regard to your relationship to the world is summarized in your values. What you think is right, what you think is wrong, what you think is good, what you think is unacceptable. Your values are very important, and any clash with your values in life will be destructive to your mental health. Outside your values, you have your mental life. These are your ideas. They may be your political opinions. They may have to do with philosophy and so on. They're not as important as your values because they change far more readily. Outside that, you have your emotional life or your emotional temperament. You'll find that people with similar emotional temperaments seem to get along the best. And finally, on the outer ring, the least important is the physical. Is the physical attraction or physical similarity or physical comparisons. However, there's a lot of research that shows that people tend to marry people who look very similar to themselves. That the highest form of flattery is marriage. That we tend to be attracted to people who have facial features very similar to our own. That's why they say when people grow older, they start to look like each other. Well, if they examine the wedding photographs, they find that they started off looking like each other, and that's why they look like each other more when they grow older. Number 2 key to successful relationships is that opposites attract. Opposites attract. But opposites attract in only one area, and this is important, and that's in temperament. You see, nature requires balance in all things. Yin and yang, active and passive. So nature requires that there be a balance in temperament. An extroverted person will be most compatible with an introverted person. 2 people who are equally introverted or extroverted will be most compatible. But here's a very simple test for relationships. Male or female, male, male, female, female. It's what we call the conversation test. In any conversation between 2 people who are temperamentally suited, there will be the entire period of time allocated for conversation will be full of easy conversation plus about 10% of easy silences. So that if each person will have an opportunity to talk all they want to talk, and each person will have an opportunity to listen all they want to listen, and there will be 10% of comfortable silences. Now, you may have a person who gets all their talking done in 30% of the time. And you may have another person who gets all their talking done in 60% of the time with that 10% gap, and these people will be very compatible. However, where you have problems in relationships is you have people who only like to talk 30% on the one side and a person who only likes to talk 30% on the other side, so you have big gaps of uncomfortable silence where neither has anything to say. Or the other example is where you have 2 people, each of whom have to talk 70% of the time, so you have a big clash over airtime. There's always a clash over who's going to be able to speak the most, and you'll find that this relationship will be incompatible too. So opposites attract, but only in temperament. In all other essentials, similarities attract. And this brings us to number 3. Number 3, key to success in relationships, is commitment. Commitment is very important. And in order for a relationship to work, a person should have a total commitment to the relationship, which means 100%. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. But one of the most beautiful definitions of love in relationships that I ever read was from Dr. Scott Peck, where he said that love is the total commitment to the full development of the potential of the other. Love is your total commitment to the full development of the potential of the other person. And this, to me, lays to rest all the arguments over male, female, women's lib, and so on and so forth, because if a person truly loves another person, they want that person to develop their full potential as a human being, and they will do everything possible to make that possible. Commitment is really clear. I have a good friend named Charlie Jones who talks about divorce. He said the way to deal with divorce is very simple. He says never consider it. He said don't even think about it. Don't talk about it. Never even consider the possibility of divorce. He says murder, yes, but never divorce. Now, maybe that's a little bit stringent, but the key to a successful relationship is the depth of commitment that each person has. Most dangerous thing in a relationship is when people start thinking in terms of, well, if it doesn't work out, I can go somewhere else. If it doesn't work out, we can always get a divorce. Relationships like that almost invariably end in a divorce. Number 4, key to a successful relationship, is similar self-concepts attract. Similar self-concepts attract. Now, this means when we talk about similar self-concepts, we talk about how much you like yourself, how much you value yourself. We talk about what you might call the happiness scale. The happiness scale means how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10. That's the basic question. You will find that you will always be most compatible with a person who is just about as happy as you are. If ever you get involved in a relationship with a person who is unhappy, and you allow yourself to be deluded into believing that you're going to bring them up and they're going to be happy at your level because you're going to help them, you're entering into a fool's game, because most people who are unhappy are quite happy being unhappy, and they have no intention of changing. As a matter of fact, the unhappiest relationships I've ever seen in my life are when a generally happy, positive person gets involved with a negative person and tries to bring them up to their level, because it never works. So ask yourself this: how happy is the person that you're thinking about getting involved with? And understand that it is very rare, except by tremendous effort, that people change their level of happiness. This brings us to number 5. Key to success in relationships is liking. Now, liking, which has to do with respect, is more important than being in love, and more permanently satisfying. Because being in love, although it comes and goes, is a passing condition. Being in love is something that ebbs and flows. As a matter of fact, you can be furiously angry with your mate or with your spouse and still have an excellent relationship. And you can still never consider breaking up, as long as you like and respect them. But if the liking and the respecting goes out of a relationship, the being in love or the infatuation is never enough to hold it together. Now, here's a simple test with regard to liking. It's what I call the best friend test. The best friend test simply says that if you are ideally suited to your mate will be your best friend. That there will be nobody that you would rather spend time with. There will be nobody that you trust more. There will be nobody that you would be more open, honest, candid, and frank with. That your mate or your spouse will be your best friend. It's the simplest measure of all, because you cannot force being best friends. Best friends just happens naturally when everything is right. On the other hand, if you are in a situation where you could not tell your spouse or your mate a lot of the things that are important to you, where you talk to other people more than you talk to them, where you have a lot of secrets that you keep from them, or a lot of things that you keep inside yourself, then generally speaking, you are probably not involved with your best friend, and the prognosis for your relationship is not very good. Number 6, requirement for happiness in relationships is communications. Now, communications, or communicating back and forth in a relationship, is the elixir that keeps a relationship alive. Without it, a relationship dies. Without it, the relationship has no possibility. And good communications in a relationship not only require speaking and listening, not only require trying to understand, give and take, but they require time. And they require a high quality and a high quantity of time. Very important, quality and quantity of time. What my wife and I do on a regular basis is we will go on a trip. And sometimes we'll go on a trip to a place that takes 3 or 4 hours, and we'll leave the children with a housekeeper or someone else, and we will drive in that car, no radio, no tapes, for 3 or 4 hours and just talk. And we'll get some of the highest quality and quantity of talk and conversation. And so if you use that analogy, what you might call a car trip analogy, which is uninterrupted conversation with your spouse over an extended period of time, you'll find the most remarkable things will happen. But if you're not spending a high quality and quantity of time with your spouse or your mate, the relationship is going to suffer, and many relationships will die as a result. Now, 2 critical points with regard to this, from my point of view as a man. Number 1 is, remember that men are not mind readers. One of the hardest things for women to understand is that men are not mind readers. They do not know what women mean or what women want them to think half the time. And it is not fair for women to expect men to know what is bothering them or what they want or what they need. And number 2, remember this, that men are direct, women are indirect. What does this mean? Well, if a man and a woman are driving down the street and the woman is thirsty, she might say, as they pass a McDonald's, she might say, "Honey, are you thirsty?" And he'll say, "Nope," and keep on driving. What she was trying to say was that she was thirsty, why don't they stop? Now, the man, on the other hand, if he saw the McDonald's and was thirsty, he said, "I'm thirsty, let's stop." So women tend to be indirect, and they get really angry when men don't understand what they were trying to say. So one of the best things that you can do in communications is be a little bit more direct. Be a little bit more clear, a little bit more specific. Now, an important point with regard to men. According to a recent survey, a recent study, it shows that men are 95% more likely to interrupt a woman in a conversation than a woman is likely to interrupt a man. And one of the best things that you can do in a relationship, you men out there, is take time to listen to your spouses. One of the gentlemen who went through my seminar said the most valuable thing he got from this part on human relations was when you go home at night, before you, the man, the direct person, the extrovert, starts telling your woman all about everything that went on during the course of the day, ask her how her day has been. Ask her how her day has unfolded. What has happened to her? How are things going with her? Try doing that as a discipline, and you'll be literally astonished at what it will do for your relationship. And then listen without interruptions. Listen and pause before replying. Listen and ask questions for clarification. Listen and give positive feedback. All right, now let's talk about some of the problems in relationships. Problems in relationships. Number 1 problem in relationship, lack of commitment. Now, lack of commitment is amazingly common because we live in a society today where it is considered clever to protect yourself by not making too deep a commitment to anybody. So what people do is they often get involved in relationships, but they only get involved up to their toes. Lack of commitment is often expressed in a trading relationship. A trading relationship is a relationship where one says, you do your share and I'll do my share. You put in your amount, I'll put in my amount, and neither one of them wants to get in 100%. Neither one of them wants to run the risk of being rejected. So by both of them not running the risk of being rejected, they both end up being rejected. And the key to resolving this, as I said before, is for each individually to make a 100% commitment to this relationship and say that no matter what happens, I will never leave this relationship. Make that decision to get in. Either get in or get out. Now, if you feel that you can't make the commitment, that will tell you something that's very important for you to know. If your spouse feels that he or she can't make the commitment, or mate feels that he or she can't make the commitment, that will tell them something too. But in either case, either get in or get out. And it will relieve an enormous amount of tension and stress in a relationship. Now, number 2 is trying to change the other, or expecting the other to change. You see, when we try to change another person, do you know what we're saying? We're saying, in effect, that you're not good enough the way you are. You don't come up to my standards. How many times do people enter into marriages with one or the other saying, well, I'll change him or her as time goes on. They'll shape up more into the model that I desire or I approve of. Whenever you try to change another person, and why do we try to change another person? We keep disapproving of the person they are and the things that they do. We keep asking them to be different. We want them to be more of this or less of that. Now, that great American philosopher, Flip Wilson, had a wonderful expression which he used to cover this. And it's simply this. He says, what you sees is what you get. Don't enter into a relationship with the intention of changing the other person. Because what you seize is what you get. People don't change unless they intensely desire to change and are willing to practice some of the things we talked about in this seminar. However, if you just stop trying to change the other person and accept them unconditionally, with unconditional love, acceptance, and approval, often they will bend over backwards to change for you. But there's something within every human being that resists being changed by another person. Number 3 cause of problems or in relationships is jealousy. Now, jealousy has to do with the fear of failure. Where does jealousy come from? It comes from deep down inside. We don't feel that we're good enough. It comes from this old feeling of low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. This is something, by the way, that is rooted in our inferiority complex. Alfred Adler, the great psychologist, the disciple of Freud, said that the natural human condition is that of feeling inferior. The reason for that is because we grow up as children in a world of giants where we are made to feel inferior because we're so small. And as adults, we are continually struggling against this inferiority complex. This feeling that I'm not good enough leads to feelings of jealousy. The feeling is that that other person could never love me unconditionally. Therefore, I'm not safe. I'm not okay in this relationship. And the way that you get over this feeling of jealousy is work on your own self-concept and say over and over again, I like myself. I like myself, or I love myself. Because the more you boost your own self-esteem, remember there's an inverse relationship between these fears and how much you like yourself. The more you like yourself, the more your self-esteem goes up, the more your fears of jealousy, fears of rejection, fears of loss of love, and so on go down. So be alert to jealousy, and remember though, it has nothing to do with the other person. It has only to do with the person experiencing it. And I'll say one more thing, is that it is not clever to make somebody feel jealous. It is not smart, it is not clever, it is not fashionable. It is just an unkind and cruel thing to do, especially if it is successful. Now, number 4 is self-pity. Where does self-pity come from? Well, there's several sources. Almost invariably, self-pity comes from having had a parent who was very good at self-pity. So what we did is we imitated the parent. As we grow up, we find opportunities to experience self-pity ourselves. Self-pity is also rooted in low self-esteem. It's not liking ourselves very much. Now, what is the solution for self-pity? Very simply this, is get busy. Get busy. People who are busy, people who are working on something that's important, people who have a worthwhile purpose in life, do not experience self-pity. It is only people who are going around in circles, drifting, waiting for someone else, and so on. So you can overcome self-pity simply by working on your self-concept and set some goals. Set clear, specific goals and get going on them. Remember the law of substitution. It says you can't feel sorry for yourself. You can't even feel jealous. You can't even feel angry if you're busy working on goals that are important to you. The conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, positive or negative. And then we come to number 6. Number 6 is a major reason which sort of summarizes everything that we've talked about up to now as a major problem in relationships, and it is called incompatibility. Incompatibility means that you and the other person are not compatible. Now, this is very, very hard for us to accept because of fears of rejection and failure. We often stay in relationships long past the point where it's clear that we no longer have anything in common. And we do that for a variety of different reasons. One, we do that because we don't want people to think that we have failed. Another reason that we do it is that it's our comfort zone and we don't want to go through all the difficulty of separating. But what happens is this. When two people meet, they're like two dinner plates. And what they have is they have areas where they're separate. Here's the man, here's the woman. They have areas where they're separate and different, and they have areas that they have in common. Now, as a relationship develops, sometimes these areas grow. And so when they finally get married, they find that they have an enormous amount in common, and sometimes they have areas out here that they have which are separate. As the French say, vive la différence. Or, long live the difference between men and women. However, especially in our 20s, as we grow and evolve and change rapidly, what can happen is that we can grow apart. And we can reach the point where the man and the woman now have a great gap between them. They have very little in common. How can you tell when incompatibility is set into a relationship? Number 1, the first thing that goes is the laughter. Is people stop laughing together. And the second thing that goes is the friendship. Is they don't look upon themselves as friends anymore. They look upon themselves as sort of people that are forced together. Now, if incompatibility is set into a relationship, the natural thing to do, the best thing to do, is to try to patch it up. Try to find some kind of a bridge. Try to put it back together, if you like. Try to bind it together, especially if there's children and a lot of other things involved. However, please understand this. If incompatibility has developed, and incompatibility is the rule, you have to go through dozens and dozens of men or members of the opposite sex before you ever find one that you can settle down with. If incompatibility has happened, accept it as a reality. Because if you do not, you're going to enter into the phenomena of denial. And the denial is going to cause tremendous stress and resistance and unhappiness. Number two is, remember that if it has happened, no one is guilty. Just because you are no longer compatible with the other person doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the other person, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means that just incompatibility has set in. Remember, it just happens. It's like the rain. When it rains, nobody is guilty. It just happens. It is the most common phenomena in relationships, is incompatibility. And one final point with incompatibility is this. In my experience, I find the major reason why people stay in relationships that they're no longer happy in, that there's no love, there's no music, there's no laughter, there's no future to the relationship, is because of what others might say. It's because of what others might say. And this is really amazing to me. Because whenever I speak to people, and I've been in the same situation, I've never been through a marriage that didn't work out, but I was a bachelor for 35 years, and so I've been through relationships that didn't work out, and I've been amazed at how much social pressure there is created in our own minds to stay in a relationship that we don't enjoy because we think others will disapprove of us. We think that others will be upset. We think that others will be saddened. And the fact of the matter is, as everybody eventually finds out, is that nobody cares as much about your relationship as you do. And if you sacrifice your peace of mind for what you think others might say, you will never, never be happy. Incompatibility is a reality. If you cannot repair it, if you cannot overcome it, then deal with it honestly, deal with it graciously, face it in a straightforward way, deal with it in a respectful, dignified way, and find some way to resolve the relationship so that it doesn't hurt anybody more than it has to. Remember this with regard to loving relationships, that your objective, your responsibility is to set joy and fulfillment in your relationships as your minimum standard. Set peace of mind, happiness, joy, fulfillment, tranquility. Make your home and your loving relationship the crown jewel of your emotional life, and settle for nothing less. Keep working at it, keep striving, keep chopping, keep changing, do whatever is necessary, but you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your life, you owe it to your character, your integrity, your peace of mind, your health, and your future to settle for nothing less than a relationship that is a joy to be a part of.
Session 26, How to Raise Super Kids.
Perhaps the most permanent relationship that you ever enter into in life is that of bringing a child into the world. It outlasts many marriages, it outlasts jobs and careers, it outlasts money and locations and businesses. It lasts until one or the other of you passes on. And most of us come into this world without any idea of how to raise children. We come in without any basic parenting skills. And the great tragedy is that most people don't make any effort to pick up any skills. It's possible today for you to learn so much about how to raise happy, healthy, self-confident, wonderful, loving, vibrant, fulfilled children. There's so much information available on it, and you know that about 80 to 90% of parents never bother to buy a book on the subject or consult an expert or even seek advice except from their mother-in-law or from the person in the backyard. Very important. Today, in this session, we're going to talk about how to raise super kids, and I'm going to give you some key ideas that you can use. And I have 3 kids who I think are super kids. I have Christina, who's 7. I have Michael, who's 5, and I have little David, who's 1 year old. And these kids are just great. And everything that I'm going to tell you, we use on them 7 days a week. And I can promise you this, the law of sowing and reaping is true with children. What you sow in your children, you reap in your children. Everything that you put into your children, you're going to get out, positive or negative. But if you put good into your children, the wonderful thing is that they will blossom like flowers. So this starts us off with a basic question. What is the role of parenting? What is the key role of parenting? The answer to that question, in my estimation, is very simple. The role of parenting, most important job that we enter into, the role of parenting is to nurture children. That's all. The role of parenting is to nurture children until they're 18 years of age, until they reach the age of maturity, and to build high self-esteem in those children. To build high self-esteem. In my estimation, this is the key role of being a parent. Nothing else is significant or important next to the building of self-esteem. Why is that? Because if you can raise a child to the age of 18 where they love themselves, they respect themselves, they unconditionally accept themselves, they consider themselves to be valuable and worthwhile and important young people, they're self-reliant, self-responsible, and capable of making their own decisions, then no matter what life can throw at them in the years to follow, you've set them off on a solid, rock-hard psychological foundation, and they can make their own way and make a wonderful life for themselves and other people. If, however, you give children everything else in the world, but you leave them without this self-esteem, if you leave them without this self-confidence, without this belief in themselves, without this conviction that they can do whatever is necessary to be successful, if you leave them anything except self-esteem to that degree, you have not succeeded as a parent. So raising children and building high self-esteem in children becomes the organizing principle of parenting. The organizing principle means that you continually ask, knowing that everything counts, you continually ask, does this build self-esteem in my child? Is this situation, is this issue, is my response contributing toward building and nurturing this little human being that's been entrusted to me, or is it not? With Christina, my first child, wonderful little girl, I've explained to her at a very early age that she came to me, as Khalil Gibran explains in his book, The Prophet, she came to Barbara and I from God. And that our job is to take care of her and to love her until she grows up. And that she doesn't belong to us, and we don't own her, and our job is not to shape her the way we want her to be shaped. Our job is to nurture her and discipline her and train her and give her every opportunity to grow and expand and develop. But our job is just to take care of her until she grows up. And she understands that very clearly, that we are there to nurture her and to build high self-esteem, and that she came from God. And she thinks of herself as being really, really special, because surprise, surprise, none of her friends have been told that. So these are the organizing principles that we use with our children. Now, no parent is perfect. Parents make mistakes, parents get tired, parents get irritable, parents shout at their kids, parents spank their kids and punish their kids. But generally speaking, if we use the organizing principle of building high self-esteem in our children, these are the things to remember. Number one is destructive criticism is extremely painful to a child. Destructive criticism sets children up for a lifetime of inferiority complex, low self-esteem, fears of failure and rejection. So never use destructive criticism on your children. Never run your children down. Never use destructive criticism on your children. Instead, do everything possible to build them up. That doesn't mean that you don't discipline them. That doesn't mean that you don't control them. But you never say you're a bad boy, or you're a bad girl, or you're a little brat, or you're no good, or you never tell the truth. You never say anything to your children about themselves that you do not want to become part of their personalities. Because remember, it goes straight past the conscious mind into the subconscious and is programmed away and accepted as a truth because you said it, even in a moment of anger. So never use destructive criticism on your children. Children are very vulnerable to destructive criticism. Number two, remember that lack of love, or love withheld, is the major reason for psychological, physical, and emotional problems in life. That children need love. And if you deprive children of love, and it is not, by the way, what you think inside, it is the child's perception. Everything is perception. Now, the child is pretty shallow in the formative years. The child doesn't know that you really love the child unless you tell the child, show the child, demonstrate to the child over and over and over again. Many children have grown up and found themselves visiting psychiatrists and psychologists and trying to wrestle through the problem that they never believed that their parents loved them. And if you talk to the parents, they say, well, of course I love my kids. They say, well, did you tell my kids? Well, no, I didn't tell them, but they know I love them. No, children don't know. They, as they say, they need the words. Number three, is remember that children need a continuous flow of love and approval. Love and approval is the emotional, psychological lifeline that children have to have in order to grow. Just imagine that your children are on an intravenous, and this intravenous has the critical nutrients for the development of their personality. And the critical nutrient in that intravenous is the words and gestures of love and approval and a continuous flow. And if you cut off the flow, it's like cutting off the flow of nutrients or cutting off the oxygen flow to the emotional brain. They need it every day. They need it every night. They need it morning, noon, and night. They need it continuously. When they're growing, they're very much like growing children need a lot of food. You've got to have a lot of food because they're growing. They need a lot of emotional support when they're growing too. A fourth thing to remember is children need praise. Praise is what grows children. As a matter of fact, they found that when you praise a child, their physiological system actually vibrates with new energy. They need encouragement. Remember, children are afraid because they're little kids in a big world. They need encouragement all the time. You can do it. You can do it. Sure, you can do it. Go ahead. Give it a try. Also, they need reinforcement. Sometimes they fall on their face. Sometimes they do it right. They need to be told, hey, you did a great job. That's wonderful. They need to be praised and reinforced. They need patience. Children need a lot of patience because they seem to be slow in learning. The kindest thing you can do for your children is to be patient. Be supportive. Also, to be loving, and also to be kind. Children need an enormous amount of kindness, and they need caring. They need tenderness. They need gentleness. They need, especially though, they need patience when they are the least patient. When they are the most exasperating is when they need the most patience from you, the most kindness, the most understanding, the most compassion. Now, the fifth point here is to tell your children you love them every day. Tell them you love them every day. I've been surprised. Tell them you love them every day. How many parents don't tell their children that they love them? They say, well, a kid knows I love them. I've had arguments. They say, well, they know I love them. I don't have to tell them. The fact is that kids need to know. And the reason, of course, that we don't is why? It's because our parents never told us that they loved us. If we grew up in a household where our parents never said, I love you, and I care for you, and I wish the very best for you, and they never gave us praise and encouragement, we'll grow up being very uncomfortable. But I'll tell you this, that if you'll tell your kids you love them on a regular basis, they'll tell you back, and they will teach you how to love. So learn to use the words over and over again. Now, here's 4 behaviors that parents can use to tell their children that they really love them. Behavior number 1 is the greatest gift that a parent can give to a child. It's called unconditional love. Make sure that the child knows that you love them 100%, no matter what they do, no matter what happens, that nothing in the world can ever stop you from loving them 100%. It's absolutely critical. With my little girl and my little boy, I have a little game with them that I play with them called the love game. And I ask them, how much do I love you? And we go through a game and they say, well, this much? I say, come on now. I say, this much? Come on. I say, this much? And finally they say, this much. And I say, well, what about when I shout at you? They say, well, you still love me this much. I say, what about when I put you in your bedroom? They say, you still love us this much. I say, what about when I shout at you and put you in your bedroom and make you stand in the corner? They say, you still love us this much, Daddy, because no matter what we do, you love us all the time. Now, that's the very kindest thing that you can ever convince your kids of. I do this to condition them. I do this because I want it driven so down deep into their subconscious mind that they are so totally loved that they can go throughout their life as little kids growing up and never, never, never question that their mommy and daddy really love them. Remember, the phenomenon of conditional love is what breeds the fear of rejection, which breeds feelings of inferiority and insecurity. Children, by the way, who are not brought up with enough love in their formative years, develop what is called a deficiency need, and they spend the rest of their lives, like Demosthenes with his lamp looking for an honest man, they spend the rest of their lives looking for the love that they were deprived of in childhood. Be very alert to that. You cannot give a child too much love in the formative years. You cannot love a child too much. You can give them buckets and buckets and buckets of love. Give them all the love they can absorb. So number 2 way that you show your love is with eye contact. Children have emotional fuel tanks, and they drink in the love of their parents through their parents' eyes. And when you look at your child with love and you say, I love you very much, the child just feels wonderful all over. So say, I love you, but look them in the eye. Do you know that most parents only look their children in the eye when they're scolding them? That most children grow up today with a very distinct uneasiness about direct eye contact from adults. That in our society, direct eye contact is considered a sign of hostility, because so many of us have grown up with our parents only looking at us when they're scolding us, and when they're speaking nicely to us, sometimes they just watch the television or read the paper. So look the child right in the eye. The third is physical contact. Remember, children are very emotional and very visceral. They're very physical, and they need physical contact. They need to be hugged. They need to be kissed. They need to be embraced. They need to be patted. They need to be carried. And every single time that you hold your child with warmth and love, starting from infancy all the way up to when they become grown-ups, and you pat them on the back or put your arm around them or pat them on the head, physical contact, as it says in the song, touch my hair when you pass my chair, little things mean a lot. Contact with your children is one of the ways that you tell them that you love them. Now, interestingly enough, in studies that were done in the late 40s, they found that infants who were not held in hospitals and embraced while they were being fed actually began to atrophy, shrivel up, stop taking nutrition, and many of them died of a disease called marasmus, where they lacked that physical warmth and contact. So physical contact is absolutely essential to a child's healthy well-being. And number 4 is focused attention. By the way, it's interesting, many fathers have this idea that if you give a child too much hugging, a male child, a boy, too much hugging, too much kissing at an early age, you'll make them a sissy. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. The more hugging, the more kissing, the more physical contact that a little boy has with his mother and father, and especially his father, the more masculine, the more self-assured, the more self-confident he grows up. The less he gets, the more insecure, the more angry, the more stressed he is. So remember that you can't give a child, male or female, too much physical contact. And focused attention means that you spend time with the child every day, just you and the child, walking, talking, listening, no television, no newspaper, no one else, just a few minutes a day that tells the child that the child is really valuable. You see, children whose parents don't spend time with them alone are convinced that the reason Mommy and Daddy is not doing it is because there's something wrong with me. They don't know that the parents are busy or doing something else. They just feel that there's something defective about them, and that's why the parents don't spend the time with them. So be very careful. It's the perception of the child, not the reality. All right, now the next, number 6, is positive expectations. Positive expectations were found by Dr. David McClelland of Harvard University to be one of the best single determinants of peak performance as a young person. Positive expectations of the child by the parent causes the child to do everything possible to grow up and fulfill the parent's expectations. As a matter of fact, he found that there were 2 things. One was a democratic household. That in a democratic household where the child was expected to contribute his or her opinion at an early age, and in a household where the parent said, in effect, I believe in you. No matter what you do, I believe in you. I believe you're going to do well. That these 2 factors alone led children to becoming high achievers in their teens and in their early 20s, sometimes 10, 20 years ahead of children who were not brought up in democratic households where their opinions were solicited and valued, and where their parents expressed negative expectations. Like, remember, you've heard many times, kid works hard, comes home with 5 A's and a B. First thing the parent says is, what's this B? Not, look how great the A's are, but what's the B? What this does is it completely demoralizes the child. So positive expectations are critical to the growth of a healthy personality. Number 7 is teach your children to say, I like myself from an early age. Teach your children to say, I like myself from an early age. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. You see, high self-concept children, high self-esteem children like themselves too much to get into trouble at school. They get better grades, they're more popular, they're better liked by their schoolmates and by their teachers, they have much less tendency to use drugs, they have much more resistance to peer pressure, they don't get into trouble, they don't vandalize. So teach your children to say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. With our children, we taught them as soon as they could talk to say, I like myself and I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And they stand in front of the mirror and they look in the mirror and they say, I love myself. I love myself. And they act like they love themselves. People come up to us on the street and they say, and this is great, they say to us, those kids aren't afraid of anything. Those kids aren't afraid of anything. And that was our great desire. After we came from very negative childhoods and very destructively critical parents, we wanted our kids to grow up not to be afraid. So these are the things that you do, the 7 key things to cause your children to grow up and feel terrific about themselves. Now, this brings us to an important point. Many parents who have been through our course at this point and earlier in this course feel very guilty and uneasy. They feel a little bit tense because they know they've shouted at their kids, they've been critical of their kids, they've hurt their kids are sometimes having personality problems, their kids are having problems with grades, schools, friends, their kids have low self-esteem or feelings of inferiority, and the parents are uneasy and tense because they realize that they've done to their children what their parents did to them. And now they're looking at now they are reaping the harvest, if you like. They're looking at their children and they realize that what your children are is more a result of what you have done and said to them than any other reason. So, here is the solution to that. Absolutely amazing. It is possible for you to undo the past with this very simple technique. First thing you do when you go home from this course is you gather your children around you. You bring them around you, and you sit them down, and you apologize to them for all of your hitherto destructive criticism. You say to them, I've been to a course, I understand the effect of destructive criticism, and I'm sorry for every single thing I ever said or ever did that caused you to feel bad about yourself. And I apologize, and I ask you to accept my apology. Now, this is the most incredible thing that a parent can do for a child, because children want to love their parents, and they want their parents to love them. But it is the destructive criticism that builds a wall of distrust and fear and insecurity. And when you as the parent, and only you can do it, when you as the parent apologize and say, I'm sorry, will you accept my apology? The children feel suddenly liberated, like a great weight has been removed from them. Now, why do you do this? Well, because the purpose is for you to accept 100% responsibility for everything guilt-producing that you've ever done or said to them. Accept 100% responsibility and say, I am responsible, I'm sorry, I apologize. Will you accept my apology? And your children will be absolutely amazed. We've seen children whose entire lives have been transformed. 15, 16-year-old children in reformatories and boys' or girls' homes. Problem children that have been in trouble for years, literally transformed overnight in personality. I had a couple of parents go through this course not long ago, and they went home, and they had a 16-year-old daughter, and there was no communication. She was withdrawn, she was shy, she did not talk to the parents, and their parents went home and sat her down and apologized to her. They realized that they'd been complaining and complaining and complaining. Do you know the average parent in America complains and criticizes their child 8 times for every 1 time they praise the child? 8 times, 8 psychological lashes across the developing psyche or emotions of that child. They realized they'd gotten into a habit of criticizing and complaining. They went home and they apologized, and they said she came down to breakfast the next day and she was transformed. They said she was like a nightingale. She was happy, she was laughing, she was extroverted. She and her mother became tremendous friends. That she and her mother and her father began going out for dinner. I mean, it was just like a miracle. I saw a family once where the father had raised 10 children. He'd come from a negatively, destructively critical environment, and he had been destructively critical of all his children. Many of them had serious marital problems. Some of them had serious psychological problems with their spouses. The oldest one was over 30. The youngest one was 14. At the end of the seminar, they're all in there, all the children, all the spouses, the father and mother. At the end of the seminar, he got up in the room and turned around and went from child to child and said, I apologize. Will you forgive me? And as he went to each child broke down in tears and started crying. And by the time that circle had been made, everybody in the room was crying. It was absolutely phenomenal. And the family literally transformed overnight. Then the next thing you do, so logical, so obvious, promise never to do it again. Promise never to do it again. Why? To make sure that it's clear, and then finally, give them permission to remind you when you forget. Give them permission to remind you when you forget. Because you will forget, or when you slip from time to time. And let them say, Daddy, is that destructive criticism? Or Mommy, is that destructive criticism? And you say, yes it is, you're right, I apologize. You will find that if you make it a game to abolish destructive criticism, this is your goal in your household. Do not allow destructive criticism in your household. Abolish destructive criticism. Do not allow anybody in your household to destructively criticize anybody else. Make it absolutely clear that you can argue, you can fight, you can disagree. All families do that. But nobody is allowed to devalue or run down the other person. Make it a game and make sure that you catch each other and get it to the point where a person says, is that destructive criticism? Or a person can say, I don't accept that. And if you've made a mistake, you back off and you say, I'm sorry. Now, with my little kids, I learned this idea before my kids came along. With my little kids, what I said to them is, do you forgive me? I'm sorry, I apologize, do you forgive me? And now sometimes we'll have an argument, or I'll send them to their bedrooms, and Michael will come to me, and he came to me the other day, and he said, Daddy, he said, I forgive you for sending me to my bedroom. And it was the cutest thing you could imagine. And I said, Michael, I'm sorry, thank you very much. I apologize. And if you apologize all the time, you keep the decks open. Now, one final point that I don't want to forget is this, is that in order to apologize to your children, you've got to get your ego out of the way, and you have to put the mental health of your children ahead of anything else. When you apologize, it takes courage and character for you to apologize. It takes courage and character. It takes tremendous strength for an adult to apologize to a child. But when you lead by example, you build courage and character in your children. Do you know how many people spend half of their life trying to avoid admitting I was wrong, I made a mistake? When you demonstrate courage and character to your children by saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, we don't use destructive criticism in this house, you demonstrate to them that they too can demonstrate courage and character. They too can say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake. They too can apologize when they say or do something that hurts someone else. And setting that example for your children, it sets them off on a foundation of high self-esteem, of high self-value, and enables them to spend their entire lives realizing their potential rather than compensating for their deficiencies. It is the kindest thing that you can do for a child, and I hope you do it for yours.
Session 27, Finding True Purpose in Life.
Now we come to the final question. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of your life? Why are you here? Why do you exist at all? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you have a life? Why are you on the earth? Is it simply to be born, to grow up, to work, to reproduce, to die? Or is there something else? In my estimation, there is something else. Something far more important. In this session, I want to talk to you about my discoveries and my thoughts about what the true purpose of life is. The true purpose of life, in my estimation, is to find a mission. Some of the wisest men and women of this century and of previous centuries have looked at this whole idea of why a human being is put on this earth, and they've come to the conclusion that we are put on this earth to fulfill our potential by finding our true mission in life. Emmett Fox calls this your heart's desire. What is your heart's desire? Your heart's desire is something that is placed deep down inside you, maybe even before you're born. And it's something that calls to you and sings to you and lures you on throughout your life. And the reason that we say that only 1 or 2 or 5 out of 100 people fulfill their potential in any given generation is because most people ignore the callings of this heart's desire. They push it aside. They ignore it. They pretend it isn't there. They get involved in bills and families and business and careers, and this tugs at them. Sometimes they don't get into it until later on in life. But every single person has the ability to establish for themselves a mission. So then let's look at the men and women who have affected mankind in the most positive and profound way throughout all of history. In our civilization, in our culture, the most powerful person was Jesus of Nazareth, a humble carpenter who preached for 3 years in Galilee and then died in Jerusalem but has had more of an impact on more people in this world than any other man who ever lived, than all the other kings and all the other monarchs and dictators of history. One simple man who never wrote a word, never appeared on television, never cut a record, was the man who has had more influence than anyone else. And beyond Jesus, there was Buddha. The followers of Buddha, and interestingly enough, Buddha taught a very similar message to Jesus. He taught the message of universal love. He taught the message of the brotherhood of all mankind, that all of us are united in loving each other. And also Mohammed. And Mohammed has followers that number in the hundreds of millions. Buddha's followers number almost 1 billion. The followers of Jesus number probably 2 billion. And if you look down the people who have been affected by them, you have St. Francis of Assisi, has had a profound influence establishing the Franciscan order. You have, in our day, you have Mother Teresa of Calcutta having a profound influence. You have my mentor, Albert Schweitzer of Africa. S is Schweitzer, D-B-I-T, Schweitzer. And you have people like Florence Nightingale and others. What is the unifying theme of these people? A man named Ralph Waldo Trine wrote a wonderful book many years ago called What the Whole World's A-Seekin'. What the whole world is looking for. And his conclusion, very wisely, that what the whole world is looking for, what you and I are looking for, is some mission that we can lose ourselves in, that somehow enriches and ennobles and benefits the lives of other people. In fact, we have found that we only become great to the degree to which you are able to lose yourself in something bigger and grander and better than yourself. That's why selfish people, for instance, people who think only of themselves, are only to be pitied because they never have any joy or happiness or fulfillment. Now, Mother Teresa or Albert Schweitzer, some of these people, maybe they never made very much money, but the contribution that they made, the model that they set, the example that they set for us, has affected more people than perhaps all the people who made money throughout all of history. It's only when you find a mission in which you can lose yourself that you achieve true greatness in life. From the time we began this seminar to now, we have been aiming it at this one simple conclusion, that the purpose of life, your purpose, your earthly purpose, is simply this. It is to develop and become a totally loving person. It is to look at the great models of mankind, and you'll find that the great models of mankind, the ones who have had an impact far beyond their times, Jesus and Buddha and Mohammed and the teachers and scholars of all the religions, have been those who have strived toward becoming totally loving toward other people. They have given their entire lives in service, and service is the word. How can you tell if you're a loving person? You can tell by the value and the quality and the quantity of the service that you give to others, unselfishly from your heart with no hope of reward. Now, by becoming totally loving persons, there's a very simple measure. We develop loving relationships. That's why we talk about how important it is with regard to our marriages. There are many people who want to go out in the world and develop loving relationships, but they haven't yet developed those beautiful loving relationships at home with their spouses and with their children, with their close friends. So developing loving relationships is the highest order of human life. How can you tell? Because at any single time in your life, if you want to take stock of your assets, if you want to take stock of your accomplishments, your most precious resources, you will find that they will always be caught up in the people that you love and have loved, and the people who love you and who have loved you. That when you look back over the landscape of your life as an adult or as an older person, you'll look back and you'll find that you won't remember the money that you made or the careers that you built or the jobs that you have. What you'll remember is the people you loved and the people who loved you and the people who still do. So developing a high quality and quantity of loving relationships is the great business of life. The people like Jesus and Buddha and Mohammed and St. Francis and others of this day and previous days are men and women who committed their lives to serving others, and they did it because they had this tremendous love to give away to mankind. Now, how do you become a totally loving person? It's not that complicated. It's not easy, but it is simple. Number one is accept yourself unconditionally. Accept yourself as a valuable and worthwhile human being. Don't be the type of person who doesn't feel that they're good enough. Just accept yourself unconditionally. Recognize that you were put here on this earth for a specific purpose, a valuable purpose. that God doesn't make anybody extra, then God don't make no junk, that there is nobody on this earth that is here for no reason. Everybody has a purpose, and your purpose is to find your purpose. Your purpose is to find your mission, the place where you can make a significant contribution. The second part of becoming a totally loving person is to accept total responsibility for everything that you are and everything that you become. Accept total responsibility, which means no blaming, no excuses. Just get on with it. Number 3 is learn to forgive. Again, the key to the kingdom of heaven is forgiveness. The key to the kingdom of heaven, the key to all spiritual development, the straight gate is forgiveness. The ability to freely forgive other people. No grudges. No anger. No frustration. No grudges. Just let go of all grievances against you. That's why it says in the Lord's Prayer, it says, and forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. Number 4 is feed your mind with loving thoughts. Feed your mind with loving, positive thoughts. Don't feed your mind with mental candy. Don't feed your mind with mental junk. Feed your mind with the kind of thoughts that are consistent with you becoming the very best person that you can possibly be. Number 5 is set noble goals and work toward them. Set noble goals and ideals to be the guiding lights of your life. Noble ideals and values. Say to yourself, are these the values, are these the goals, are these the ideals of the very best person that you could possibly be? Number 6 is take good care of your body. Take good care of your body. Remember, the body is the temple of the soul. Take good care of your body. Put into it good food. Give it good exercise. Give it good rest. Give it good nutrition. Take good care of your body. And number 7, practice the golden rule. Practice the golden rule in that practice kindness, patience, tolerance more than anything else. Tolerance of the diversity and difference of other people toward others. Love, understanding, compassion. Remember, everybody in the world is carrying a heavy load. Now, as you practice these principles, you will start to become a more and more loving person. As you practice these principles, you will find yourself drawn almost inevitably, almost inexorably, you'll find yourself drawn toward your mission. You'll find yourself drawn toward the area of service. Now, believe me, one of the best areas of service in the whole world is the business world, because our free enterprise system is based on serving other human beings. But you can serve other people in any profession, in any capacity. You'll have an opportunity to give and to increase the quality and quantity of your service to others, to enhance and enrich and uplift the lives of other people. Remember, you're put on this earth to do something for other people. The measure of how well you're doing as a human being is very simply this, is that you only have love to the degree to which you express love to others. You only have love to the degree to which you express love to others. In other words, you do not have love in isolation of other human beings. You cannot say, I am a loving person, without having loving relationships as the proof, if you like. You can only have love to the degree to which you feel love for other persons. So the more you express love to other people, and that's why we are given families, and that's why we are given intimate relationships, and that's why children are sent to us to teach us to develop our breadth and depth and capacity for love in such a way that we could never learn otherwise. So we express love to others, and then once you develop love for yourself by accepting yourself unconditionally, practice giving your love away. Practice giving your love away. You see, an interesting thing about love is that love only grows by sharing. That love only grows by sharing. You cannot have any more love than you have right at this moment in your life, except to the degree to which you give it away to other people. So love only grows by sharing. Now, the wonderful thing is that the more you give away, the more you have. The more you give love away, the more you have. So the more you give, the more you have to give. The less you give, the less you have to give. This is where the law, the more you give, the more you have. You can never give it away. This is where the law of sowing and reaping comes in more than anything else. The law of compensation. In that if you give, just a little bit of love away. Just a little bit, it's enough. Because that alone will cause a flow to start coming back to you. If you give a little bit more will come back to you until you get onto the upward spiral of life. Now, many years ago, I met a beautiful grandmother who had come up in a home where her parents had taught her to be kind and compassionate and loving to others. And when her parents died, she went back and met with her other brothers and sisters to divide up their possessions. And there's only one thing that she wanted. She'd married a very rich industrialist. The only one thing she wanted was a little plaque that hung over the fireplace of that loving home all the time she was growing up. And on the plaque was a little quatrain or a little verse. And when she told it to me, I wrote it down, and I'll share it with you. And it said this. It said, "Only one life that soon is past. Only what's done with love will last. Only one life that soon is past. Only what's done with love will last." Now, if you understand that, you realize if you look back over your life, you'll find that only the things that you did with love have lasted. Only the things that were done with love have had any lasting value. And if you use that as your guiding, organizing principle in life, that only what's done with love will last, you will start to move and evolve more surely toward the stars. The opposite of love is fear. The opposite of fear is love. If fear is the great obstacle that holds us back from fulfilling our potential, love is the great doorway that kicks open all the possibilities of the universe for us. And if you will practice this, first of all, learn to love and accept yourself unconditionally. You are valuable. You are a valuable and worthwhile human being. No matter what happens, you are still a valuable and worthwhile human being. Love yourself unconditionally. Accept full responsibility for your life. Freely forgive others. Look for the best. Take care of yourself. Work on goals that are worthy of you. Set a mission that is challenging for you. And practice giving your love away to others. And you will develop more surely toward the stars. I wish you luck. I wish you success. I wish you love. Thank you very much.
This is the end of Side 2. Please fast forward the tape to the end to cue up Side 1 for your next listening.